Hey folks, welcome back to Canada's Boxing Channel. Hope everyone's doing well. So I saw an interesting interview on, I think it was Box Nation, with Andy Lee, who's the trainer of Usyk Parker and of Paddy Donovan. And he was talking about both fighters, actually. I think that most people's taglines will sort of talk about Parker and Usyk, but there was some good stuff in the interview. So I'll just sort of give you my own take, my own synopsis, if you like, of what Andy Lee was saying. So clearly, Team Parker want to fight Usyk for the WBO belt. The WBO has ordered Usyk to defend that belt against Parker, and Andy Lee is really hopeful that Usyk will do that and not let the belt go. And, you know, the belt would then be fought over by Parker and somebody else, or possibly even Parker would be upgraded to full champion. Andy Lee was saying that, you know, Parker doesn't want to be gifted the belt. Parker really wants to be able to fight for the belt. And when the interviewer was saying, well, you know, maybe Parker could fight somebody else, you know, Andy Lee said, well, you know, the next guy down is Justice Hooney, who, you know, in the fullness of time might be somebody. He's an Aussie, he's a Tongan, Parker is a Samoan and a Kiwi. You know, there could be some interest, but right now it's not a big fight, and Joe always wants to go for bigger fights. So the interview was talking about Anthony Joshua as a potential Parker opponent for a vacant WBO belt, and you can see that Andy Lee was, again, not particularly biting on that. And the interviewer was saying, well, you know, these days anything can be made, and I mean, as I was listening to this, I was thinking, I don't want to see that either. You know, I mean, like, whatever. I mean, the only benefits to Team Parker, I suppose, would be, well, Joshua's a big crowd, a big draw, and it would be a chance for Parker to get revenge over AJ. But Andy Lee was insistent that the only real fight that Parker wants is the Usyk fight. He said, you know, next fight has to be big. And he said that he also thinks that Parker's the only real threat to Usyk. He said that, excuse me, I'm just looking at my notes. He has the right stature, the right height, and the right pace to match Usyk. And there's also then less of a coordination gap. He said that Usyk really likes these, you know, big 6'5" and taller guys that Usyk can get in under. And when we saw that with Fury, right? And Andy was saying that as a former southpaw boxer himself, he feels he could come up with a really good game plan to help Parker beat Usyk. I mean, I don't think that Parker would be my favourite to beat Usyk, but I'm certainly very keen on the fight. As you know, I don't particularly want to see Dubois and Usyk, mostly because it's a retread, it's a rematch. I'm tired of Usyk having to fight the same British guy twice in order for it to be considered officially a victory. And I also, as you know, I'm not a fan of Dubois, and I've got reservations about Dubois that I haven't been able to shake off. And until I can shake them off, I'm not going to be fully supportive of Dubois. Andy also talked about Caballel as being a very capable, competent fighter, a real danger man in the division. It's very complimentary of Caballel. But with the Dubois thing, I was surprised that Andy Lee would say what he did say, and what he did say resonated with me because I've been saying the same thing on this little channel, and I know that the lads on Porky's Corner, we've all been saying the same thing. We haven't been like some other channels just buying the story at face value. Oh, nothing to see here, move along. I mean, it kind of annoys me when channels do that. They just buy whatever the promoter says this is the narrative, you follow it. You know, Andy Lee said there was no real proof of illness of Daniel Dubois. The next day, there was talk of Dubois and Usyk. So Andy Lee and his team believe that Dubois and team said, why risk fighting Joseph, who is in great form? So basically what they're saying is they didn't want to risk the banana skin of Parker they wanted to sort of like, oh, okay, we'll swerve that clear shot to Usyk. And when the interviewer was asking, well, what about all the money they spent? They wouldn't have spent all that money. Andy Lee said, well, that people, that happens. That would be an experience. It's, it's a very minor cost in comparison to the massive payday that you would get fighting Usyk. So I know some people have taken me to task on this channel and said, don't be ridiculous. No one's going to spend millions of dollars on a training camp and then swerve. Well, from somebody like Andy Lee, who ought to know, certainly would know way more than me, that seems to be one of those sort of almost like a cost of doing business calculations. So, take it from Andy Lee if you don't want to take it from me. I'm not saying that he absolutely knows, but I'm saying that he's in a much better position to know than I am. He also then circled back to the illness. He said, he may have been feeling ill, but that's down to preparation, arriving only a week early. And he said that he and Team Parker arrived 3 weeks early because even though it's not a big time difference, it's a relatively long flight, it's a different environment, and there's lots of things your body goes through, which again is interesting. I wasn't aware that Team Parker had been out there for 3 weeks to get totally acclimated. That makes a lot of sense to me, though. And when the interviewer said, well, they said a British Border Control doctor pulled them out, which, as you know from watching this channel, there are two different stories. The doctor pulled them out, or the doctor said, well, your guy's going to be tired after a few rounds, and the team pulled him out. Like inconsistencies. I'm not going to belabor that. I've flogged that horse to death and back. But what Andy Lee said, when the interviewer was saying about the doctor, Andy Lee said, who is the doctor? We've not heard. We haven't heard anything from the doctor. Who is he? And then he said, you know what? Forget it. Can't change anything. But there's clearly a healthy dose of skepticism on the part of Andy Lee and Team Parker, which, makes me feel a bit less of a lunatic, although, maybe lunatics like company, right? Who knows? But, I know that some other channels have sort of said that people like me who think this way were kind of like conspiracy theorists. Okie dokie then. Yes, well, I've been alive long enough to see some conspiracy theories come true, right? But anyways, moving along, he talked about the Paddy Donovan fight, which, as we all know, Paddy Donovan was DQ'd for a late blow. And he said, his fighter showed class and ability in the fight. He was proud of his fighter. He said he's got more and more faith in him. And he said that Marcus McDonnell lost control of the fight. He said he should have given 5 minutes to Crocker to recover. He should have said, like we said on this channel, take control, look after the fighter who's down, say to the fighter, look, can you continue? Do you think you can continue? Give the fighter 5 minutes, send Paddy Donovan back to his corner, 5 minutes, timeout, like Usyk got 5 minutes when Dubois hit him in the below the belt, and then the fight could have restarted. He said it was clear, though, that Crocker was done. There was no way that Crocker could continue. And he sort of, complimented Billy Nelson. He said Billy Nelson, very experienced trainer, was up, jumping, screaming, it was late. And that Marcus McDonnell was overwhelmed by the occasion, lost control, and in his words, McDonnell bought into the crowd and panicked. Panicked is Andy Lee's word. And he also said he McDonnell, had it in for Paddy Donovan from the get-go. He said he doesn't know McDonnell, doesn't know him at all. He's got no personal animosity towards him. But he did say that it's interesting that just like this past weekend, he lost control in the Brad Strand fight and, called a knockdown when it wasn't a knockdown. And he also said that, of course, in the AJ Dubois fight, he was waving the fight off when it should have been a knockdown. He got his arms in the wrong place, and he went through it. He said, if a fight's over, you do this, and if it's not, you have your arms lower. And he said that, McDonnell basically gets big occasions in his head, and he's, not, he didn't say these words, these are my words, not competent, which I think we've established in our discussions on this channel. But again, it's good to hear a trainer of Andy Lee's experience, who's also been a world champion fighter. He's very versed in the business from sort of multiple ends, speaking like this. And he said he has, because I guess he's the trainer and manager of Paddy Donovan. I wasn't sure on that. Maybe I might have misheard him. Maybe there's another individual. Anyways, the team have launched an appeal with the IBF about the Crocker-Donovan decision. He didn't speculate on what he thinks the outcome would be, and that was probably wise. I don't think a lot of these appeals are successful. I don't think, from my own memory, that the bodies really get that involved unless there's something that's terribly egregious. I'm not sure what the standard of terribly egregious is, though. Anyways, I thought that was an interesting interview. I enjoyed it, and it's findable on, I think it was Box Nation. I should actually write down when I see these interviews, but I just listen to the interview and then make my notes and all that stuff. But I'm pretty certain it was Box Nation. Couldn't remember the name of the interviewer for the life of me. I don't know them, right? So anyhow, interesting. I found it interesting. Hopefully you did as well. Let me know what you think of this synopsis and what Andy Lee was saying. I understand that people will be Dubois fans and probably won't like that. People might be Crocker fans and won't like that, and that's fine. There's lots of room for differing opinions. It's like I haven't cornered the markets on right opinions. I can assure you of that. Anybody who spends 5 minutes in my home will understand that I'm more often wrong than I am right. Anyhow, mustn't say that too loudly. Okay, thank you very much for watching. Please like, please share, please subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Thank you. Bye-bye.